Hello everyone. Last week we thought about the self. Specifically we thought about self-understanding and self-esteem and self-concept issues. And today kind of a similar the concept, which is identity. But I want to just particularly emphasize the concept of identity, because in the beginning of this class I mentioned that identity formulation, that is a major developmental task of identity of adolescents. So identity is a particularly very important issue among the adolescents. So I'm going to just show that the outline of today's lessons. Identity, actually, that is a concept of Erik Erikson. He suggests that the identity formulation, that is a major developmental task during the adolescence. Actually, he originally suggests that eight stages of human development and identity, the formulation, that is a fifth stage of his the theory. And then we are going to think of 4 stages of identity that is suggested by Marcius. And then the developmental changes and also relationship with the social context. Also the intimacy issues, that is the last topics we are going to think of today. Erik Erikson, as I told you, that he is kind of a successor of the Sigmund Freud, and so he's a psychodynamic approach to the human development. And he suggests that there's 8 different stages of human development, that is throughout our life. And he believed that each stage we have a certain developmental task and have to be more focused on those particular developmental tasks. So people believe that the Erik Erikson, he is the single most influential theory of adolescence, the development, because he suggested identity issues actually originally. So that is his contribution. When the Erikson suggested the ideas of identity, there is several different kinds of the questions about the adolescents, their identity. The specifications we can think relate to the identity is the who am I? Or what am I all about? What am I going to do with my life? Or what is different about me? How can I make it on my own? Sounds like it's more existential, the questions about yourself and about your life. And these questions has to surface, supposedly, as a common and virtually is a very universal questions. So if you have these questions and you still struggle with these questions and trying to answer in your own way, that is a very necessary steps to formulate your identity. But if you have never had those questions and you just technically and live your life very efficient way, then probably you need to raise the questions related to those the questions. So when we're revisiting the Erikson's idea, kind of more in detail explanation based on his theory, he said that there is identity formulation versus identity confusion. Probably you know that Erik Erikson suggested his idea, if the people successfully fulfill the developmental task, then this pole. But on the contrary, people failed in fulfill the developmental task, then opposite pole, that is identity confusion. So adolescence, all those identity formulation, that is a 5th developmental stage, that is the occurring during the adolescence years. So it's not necessarily all the people have those identity issues during adolescence, even though that's a theoretically we expect that. But certain situation, people have those identity issues more earlier ages or later ages in their life. To go to the identity confusion to the identity, there is a certain period of the time, moratorium, meaning that it's all kind of turmoils, we don't know what directions, and lots of emotions and attached to it and confusion, and we call those stage as a psychosocial moratorium, because you feel that you don't have any clue in your life, and if you feel that there is no clue to answer who you are, then it's a kind of very anxious and fear but it's necessary to go to the identity formulation. That is the stage of psychosocial moratorium. Erik Erikson, he suggests that to fulfill the identity, two factors is very important: personality and role experimentation. So certain people have the personality kind of more curious about themselves, and they are enjoying those exploration. So role experimentation is a very necessary step. So even though you have a certain role is given, but to fulfill your identity, maybe you can try two different roles unintentionally. Then that is a really kind of a good way to fulfill and formulate your own identity. That is Erik Erikson's suggestion. And when we say that identity, like a self-concept, the Susan the Hatter, she suggested 7 different areas of the self-esteem. Kind of on the similar line when we say that identity, different dimensions. For example, vocational identity, career identity. So you know that after graduation, what kind of a career area you are going, and what kind of career aptitude you have, a higher the score. That is the answer to the career, the vocational identity. And political identity, religious identity, relationship identity, achievement, sexual, so bisexual or homosexual and heterosexual identity. So that is answer to these questions. And cultural identity, and also the interest and personality and physical identity, that is also part of identity issues. In the Erik Erikson's time of the thinking of identity, they believe that adolescence, that's a particular time to suffer and explore identity. But after that, the process is ended. But in contemporary thoughts on identity, it's kind of a different idea. It's a lengthy process. I think it's a lifelong process until the point we stop living and quit our life. We just are thinking that who am I, and trying to try something to figure out who am I. So that is a very lengthy process instead of just a stage thinking, stage developmental task. And also this is more gradual rather than it's a kind of a catalytic kind of things. So kind of a more stage thinking. It's more gradual thing, right? And also this is a complex process. As I told you, the lifelong process. It's not really starts, ending certain point. We cannot pinpoint in that way. It's more complicated things. And also synthesize. Integration. It's not just particularly during adolescence those questions it just come up with in our mind. It's more synthesizing our childhood identities and identification to construct of viable path toward our adult. So kind of combination of our past and present and future. So in that way we can have more integrative idea of who we are. That is identity. So Erik Erikson, he suggested identity and identity confusion. In the middle of that, there goes psychomoratorium stage. But after that, the James Marcia, he suggests that there are 4 different status of identity. And I want to show that the pictures here. So when we divided 4 different status of identity, there's 2 criteria. One criteria is a commitment. So how much you committed to the roles of or who you are, that is one criteria. And the other is exploration, it's experimentation. All right? So combination of these 2 components, we come up with 4 different style. So identity achievement, these persons have committed to certain roles after their exploration. So exploration, and then they have a commitment. So their commitment is very solid and stable. And they know that why they are committed to this role, because they explore already. all right? But identity moratorium's status, they explore and they are in the process of the exploration. So it's a confusion and a fluctuation because they are not ready to commit to the certain roles at the moment. So finally, after exploration in certain period of the time, we expect that these persons have a decision, make a decision to commit to the certain the roles. But sometimes people make a fear of making a decision or a dedication to the certain roles. They want to just trying the new things all the time, even though they are in the 40s and 50s. So they cannot really stabilize their life. Then they are in an identity moratorium stage throughout their life. It can be possible. And another status is identity foreclosure. It's there is a commitment, but they haven't no exploration on their own. Thinking that in the traditional Asian culture, woman's life, we expect that women have to follow the rules of three important men in their life. First, the females, they have to follow the father's command, and after get married, have to follow and obedient to their husband, and after get old, the woman has to obedient to their sons. So that kind of the belief in a traditional Asian patriarchal family system, and probably in those social situations, woman's life, we call that they are very committed to their roles as a wife and as a daughter, and sometimes as the mother. So there is a commitment, it's a higher level, but they have no exploration on their own. So in that situation, we call their identity status as identity foreclosure. And identity diffusion, no commitment and no exploration. And probably they have lots of issues in when they are young in their family. So without any support and without any direction, and that's why they don't know how to explore and how to make a decision. So ideally, we believe all the people, all the direction goes to the identity achievement, but in reality, it's not that true. So 4 different types of status we can classify. But the criticism on Marcia, so it sounds like Marcia's approach is very handsy, and it's a very simplified idea. So it's kind of very cool to think that those classification. But the criticism is that that's awfully simplified. Actually, people cannot really classify for that simple, the framework. Remember that the identity formulation, that's a complicated and lengthy the process, and we don't know whether we are committed or not, or we don't know we have to finish our exploration or not. So it's not really clear-cut answer. So that is a criticism. So extension of Marcia's concept is that exploration in depth. So when we say that explore, the level has to be in depth, right? And then identification with the commitment. So when we say that the commitment, it's more kind of solid concept and criteria of the commitment. So even though there is some still have a respect of the Marcia's idea, but trying to be more deliberate his ideas more in detail. Then we thought about even Erik Erikson and James Marcia, they believe that identity formulation, that is very necessary, even though the status and classification can be different, but that's our goal. And people trying to think that what kind of factors have influence on successful identity formulation. And family influences is very critical. Remember that? So when we say that the parenting style, family, the parents, is always they are something. It's very special people in our life. So parenting style, there's different types of parenting style, but people believe that parenting style ideally authoritative parenting style that is very ideal to provide a gentleness and a firmness that is a good basis of identity formulation. And also individuality and connectedness, and probably that is the components of authoritative parenting style. So when I say the individuality is that if the parents and the family respect their own individuality, the self-system is a self-assertion and separatedness. So in the family system, if the parents respect that you have your own idea and you can be assertive of your own opinion, and also they can have their own idea and then express their own idea different from the parents. And it can, if those opinions are respected by the parents, that is a really good sources, ingredients of identity formulation. Connectedness, probably kind of a different, the axis of the good parenting style. This is more mutuality or familiarity. That is the connection and more empathy and understanding. So mutuality is the sensitivity. And permeability is the openness to other pupils. So open to other pupils and open to the daughters and open to the sons and sensitive to their need. That is a good indication having a connectedness among the family members. So if you are grown up in the family system, respect individuality and along with the connectedness, and if you believe that your parents have authoritative the parenting style, then you can have a good start and a good basis of identity formulation. And when we say that identity, and as I told you, the different dimensions of identity, vocational, academic, athletic, and all different kinds of things, but particularly in these days, the people have to pay attention to ethnic identity. Even in Korea, we have many multicultural the groups more growing up in the nations in our country. So ethnic identity, that is a very important thing. And when I say that ethnic identity, that is a basic aspect of the self. So ethnicity, that is one area, even though it's not the only aspect of our identity, but that is a very root of our self. And ethnic identity is not necessarily just a primary, just one ethnic identity. It can be a bicultural identity. Because in these days, we say that it globalized the village and multiculturalism. So maybe people have different experiences in different culture. So it can be possible you can have an Asian cultural identity, but also at the same time, you are exposed to the American identity. So it's possible you can have a multicultural or bicultural identity. So that is another challenge in these days. People and also kind of respect those bicultural identity rather than pushing the people you have your only one primary the cultural identity. So when we say that ethnic identity, the people have a particular care of the minority people, ethnic minority people. Like in America, actually, they are starting a very different, diverse population. So they think of those ethnic minority issues earlier on. But in Asian culture, in Korean society, it's kind of getting rapidly important issues of caring ethnic minority. How can we respect their own culture? So rather than they change their cultural identity into the Korean the identity, but at the same time, how can we respect their own identity? So there is an issue we needed to think of that. And during the adolescence, the research shows that ethnic minority adolescents, they suffer from identity issues more severely compared to the major the ethnic groups. So that is one of the things we needed to pay attention to. So here, for ethnic minority individuals, when they go to the college, identity formulation take more longer time because they have to process and digest more information. It's a more complicated and also lengthy process. In addition to ethnicity, and when we say that identity, another aspect is very important is a gender identity. Okay, so Erikson, his classic presentation of identity, he believed that there is a certain roles and certain identity has to be given to the gender. And we are going to think of that issues in chapter 5, gender, in more detail. But gender, that is another very important area. When people think that who am I, they take a consideration of the gender aspect very heavily, right? So in ethnic identity or gender identity, that is a very visible things. So people can escape from those identity issues. So maybe during adolescence, female adolescents, they think of themselves as a woman. What kind of woman I wanted to be and what kind of woman I have to be. So gender identity. But in these days, the females can have more the free and open to their own identity. It's not really traditionally given and ascribed in certain identity. That is the traditional idea. But still, gender issues, it's another ongoing debate issues in these days. And chapter 5, we are going to think of the gender issues more. Intimacy, actually, that is from Erikson's idea. That's the next stage of the identity. So he believed that to have an intimate relationship, people have to fulfill their own identity first. And then they are ready to love other peoples. So Erik Erikson, he believed that to have a genuine or real sense of intimacy, people trying to develop their own identity first, then they can have a real love afterwards. So intimacy should develop after individuals are well on their way to establishing a stable and successful identity. But I want to talk about this and feminist idea, kind of a different idea from the Erikson's idea. Feminist people is that intimacy comes first. So they believe that, particularly for women, having a relationship and intimate relationship, that is a more important condition to develop own identity. So they believe that through the relationship, through the genuine intimate relationship, we can have a sense of who we are. So there is some argument of what comes first, identity or intimacy. All right, so identity, intimacy, when people say that intimacy, that is versus isolation. So if you don't have any sense of intimacy or any sense of the identity, it can either, which one comes first. If you don't have those intimacy, then high possibility you suffer from the isolation. So this is the wrap-up of the chapter 5, and there is the last two chapters of chapter 5. There is emotions and also personality issues, but I just skipped that issues in textbook. So since the self and identity, it's a major, very important topics, so you can just focus on those two topics when you study the chapter 4, and see you next week.